Hello everybody, thank you for starting to join us this afternoon for our Meet the Maker event. Welcome to the Goldsmiths Centre. My name's Charlotte Dew and I'm the Public Programme Manager here, and it's lovely to see you this afternoon. We are celebrating both Goldsmiths Fair and Shine 2020, this year both online events, and I hope you have had the chance to explore them online already, but if not, we'll tell you a little bit about how you can do that. This afternoon I have 8 fantastic makers to introduce to you, and we're really thrilled to be bringing together the graduate fair exhibitors, so those who are exhibiting in the fair for the first time, together with our Shine participants. For those of you who don't know what Shine is a talent spotting show. We do it annually. We select between 8 and 10, although this year we found 11 that were so good that we had to add another one to the mix, makers, and we nurture them through a programme of training over the summer so they can launch a new collection in the autumn with us on our Talent Spot website. So that's the Goldsmiths Centre shop. And they're all in the first 3 years of their business. They're all designer makers and make fantastic things. So you're going to meet 5 of those Shine makers this afternoon. You're also going to meet, as I mentioned, 3 fair exhibitors who are all there for the first time. They were awarded what would have been called, when it was a physical exhibition, a graduate stand, but it's the equivalent sort of nurturing process for those who are exhibiting in the fair for the first time. So we've mixed them up in terms of the order that you're going to meet them this afternoon. But if you want to understand where either of them come from, you will see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, it will either say Goldsmiths Fair or it will say Shine. Some little bits of housekeeping before I introduce you to our first maker. You will notice in your toolbar at the bottom, there's a chat function. So the chat function you can use to speak to each other, but also my fantastic colleague Tracy is out there and happy to answer questions that you might have, maybe if things aren't working, or if you want to find out more about something, Tracy will be able to answer your questions in the chat. If you'd like to ask any of our speakers this afternoon a question, I'd ask you to pop those in the Q&A. So again, in your toolbar down at the bottom, you will see a little Q&A function. So we will welcome questions from you, and we'll get to those at the end of this afternoon's session. We can't see or hear you because we are in a webinar rather than a meeting. So yes, if you talk to us, we won't hear you, but we will see your questions in the chat function. For those of you who perhaps are not so used to Zoom, you can reconfigure how you're seeing your screen. So I'm going to share some pictures of the fantastic work by our makers this afternoon. You can reconfigure your screen by choosing whether you want the speaker view or gallery view, so you see more people or just the speaker. And when I share the screen, also you can, by moving the little bar in the middle, you can adjust how much of the person you're seeing and how much of the presentation. I hope that explains it well enough, but I know from our last event that some of you wanted to see the person and the imagery a bit more, so you can adjust those in your settings. Before we kick off, I just want to point you to where you'll be able to find out more information. So I share here. So this is the Shine website, or the Shop Talent website, where you will find all of the makers from Shine their work. If you just want to browse through everything, you can just go to the home page and click on Discover Collections, and that way you'll be able to look at all the fantastic work that they've made. You can also navigate by clicking on Meet the Maker if there's a particular person's work that catches your attention, and then you can look at their specific work in detail. I'd also like to mention that on each of their pages, there's a fantastic film which they have made themselves through the training that we have delivered this year. So if you want to find out a little bit more about them, those films are also there on the website. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Goldsmiths Fair homepage and also how you go about accessing information. You'll see here though that our three makers, you'll be able to find them through the maker function on the homepage, or you can also go into the shop where the products are arranged in price order. But I hope that gives you a sense of where that information is. And again, just pose any questions to us if anything is not clear. So what I'd like to do now is introduce the first maker that we'll be speaking to this afternoon. Ellis Cameron is a jeweller who has been at the centre for various different reasons, but makes her work at the Goldsmiths Centre now, and as I've mentioned, is exhibiting in Goldsmiths Fair for the very first time. So I'm just going to share some images of the work and say a big welcome to Ellis. Hello, welcome this afternoon. Ellis, I wonder whether you might be able to kick off our event this afternoon by telling us a bit about the inspiration behind the collection of work which you have made for Goldsmiths Fair this year.
Sure. So I create very sculptural gold jewellery. It's all inspired by my Scottish heritage. I'm originally from the west coast of Scotland, a little village called Benderloch near Oban in Argyll. And growing up, I really fell in love with the history of Scotland, and we were surrounded by lots of beautiful ancient medieval buildings, really rugged seascape, and lots of different jewellery hoards and artefacts that were kind of found buried within the earth. So this collection of pieces that I'm showing at Goldsmiths Fair all encompass in different ways that idea of sculptural gold jewellery and referencing my heritage.
And the piece that we're looking at on the screen now that you describe as a shield ring, which obviously makes a really strong connection to you know, artifacts that are buried or found from the past. Would you like to just tell us a bit about the design process for this particular ring and whether you, where you drew the inspiration for that from?
Sure. So as you said, this is what I would describe as one of my shield rings. So every piece that I create, I design on paper first, and then I start carving in wax. I find wax is a really useful tool for me because it translates the textures and the sort of erosive aesthetics that are very key to my work really beautifully. So I cast everything in wax, take it into gold, and then once it's cast in gold, I use files and lots of different hand tools to kind of pull up the texture to sort of make it even more erosive and rugged. This particular piece, I create mood boards and sort of pull together lots of different imagery when I'm making any kind of piece. So this was very much looking at sort of armour imagery, ideas of protection, and sort of you know, ancient pieces of jewellery hoards, but also artefacts themselves that have been discovered throughout Scotland. And for this particular piece, I wanted to really show off, you know, in a larger scale. Obviously it's jewellery, so it's not as large as silversmithing, but just something that's a bit more statement, but also very wearable. It's very comfortable to touch and to hold and to wear, because the idea of wearability is really important to me. So pieces that you can wear again and again, they don't need to just be saved for special occasions. You could wear them all the time.
I love the idea of wearing a piece with 53 diamonds every day. That is quite a remarkable number. Staying on the subject of diamonds, I'll come to your next piece. Could you tell us a bit about how you choose the diamonds that that are mounted within your piece, because they're obviously a really interesting and beautiful range of colours that complement the gold.
So the diamonds that I use, they're all different natural coloured diamonds. I have a really good small independent supply chain for diamonds and for my gold. It's really important to me that I know where I'm getting all of my materials from, and to kind of be as accountable and transparent as possible when I'm making. So I work with a few different independent suppliers who really understand the colours that I'm looking for, the aesthetics of things that kind of take you back to the seascape of Scotland. So maybe the sunset as it's going down over the rocks, the sort of pale lilac-y heather colours that you see in the landscape, the way that the leaves change as you move into autumn and get that kind of rich reddish brown feeling. I like these colours. I feel they really speak of the landscape that I'm talking about. And this piece in particular, it's a bit of a bigger piece. It's a bit more of a statement piece. It's slightly bigger than a 50 pence coin. I would show you it, but fortunately I actually sold it already at the private view, and I've taken another order for it already. So it's just really nice when something that has such a strong narrative behind it is also appreciated as well. Both of the clients who've ordered it had wanted to know a bit more about the story, a bit more about the making process and the colours. So yes, that's a bit about this piece here.
And then we'll come on to your third piece. I love the way that you're able to, because you're using the wax and you're hand carving it and then casting, you carry this ruggedness of the landscape across into metal, which is something that we most often associate with being smooth, often polished, and I mean, I imagine that is an important part of the process for you in terms of thinking of the design and how the metal is finished.
Exactly. So this is one of my what I refer to as scatter bands, just because of the way that the diamonds are kind of embedded throughout the metal, and they do kind of the way that they're set. It looks almost as if you're on an archaeological dig and you're brushing things back and you're revealing the stones underneath them. That's very much intentional in that kind of aesthetic. And again, like you said, it is very textural on the exterior surface, but I've made a really strong point to make it as highly polished on the interior, so you get that level of comfort and also that kind of contrast between the very erosive top surface and then something that is still incredibly comfortable to wear. These bands I find work really beautifully as wedding rings. Also, I sell them for eternity rings, or just as simply as a stacking up with other pieces on them themselves. And the stones, the diamonds that I've picked for these ones, they're all completely one of a kind. Each ring's going to be quite unique, and I really like that, because then each person's getting something that's very special to them, specifically for them.
I love the way that you do have that contrast. We can see that really beautifully on the photograph that you've kindly shared with us here, but also the way that the faceted stone, it feels quite contemporary, but we're surrounded by this quite sort of rugged metal, really effective. Thank you so much, Ellis. It's really great to meet with you this afternoon. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the fair. Before I move on to our next maker, you've got a talk, haven't you, which is on the Goldsmiths Fair programme. Is that tomorrow, am I right in thinking?
No, it is on the 2nd, I believe.
Second,
Yeah,
okay.
still a wee bit away, so I'll be sending out more information and reminders about that. It's myself and another designer, Flora Bhattacharya. We're both talking about our sort of personal heritage. Obviously mine is Scottish, her is based in India, so just looking at the differences between our techniques, and you can read all about that and the talk lineup on the Goldsmiths Fair website.
Absolutely, yeah. You just go to the events bit and you'll find out more information. Thank you so much, Ellis.
No problem.
So, moving swiftly on, as we have 8 to meet, I'd like to welcome very warmly Megan Brown. Hi. So, hello, Megan. So, in contrast to Ellis, you're not based in London, are you? You're based up in Yorkshire. And Yorkshire and your where you are is, and what happens there traditionally is quite inspiring for your collection. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yes, what drew you to your woven collection, which you're presenting at Shine this year?
Well, the collection's actually inspired by my family's textile mill. Like you were saying, there's quite a textile-focused area in the north of England, and it's been in our family for generations, and actually just celebrated its 100-year anniversary. So it's got a lot of history behind it, and that's really inspired my fascination with fabrics. And with this collection, I really wanted to show that within these pieces. So each one is actually hand woven. And when I was developing the collection, it was the actual making and the experimenting with the weaving really influenced the final design. Like as you can see, these are all woven by using chains. And I found that I tried using wires and sheet metal, but it just couldn't create the texture and the feeling of fabric that I was wanting to create. So I fell into using chains, and they have that movement almost like fabric, which is quite exciting, but they have the texture as well is really beautiful, and the way when you see them up close, there's so much detail within the pieces. And with this one in particular, my draped earrings, I wanted to kind of create that idea of movement with fabric. And as you can see in the picture, they actually layer upon the ear. So it's almost like an illusion in the fact that they look like they've threaded through your ear. And it makes them quite a statement piece, and they're really unusual, but they almost they float as well, which is really nice. But these are definitely my favourite pieces.
When Megan applied to be part of Shine, we were all really taken aback by your technique. We'd not seen anything quite like this before, the weaving of the chain, because what's very beautiful and what you're talking about in that detail is that kind of undulation of the chain, that texture, which it seems wrong in metal, but it works perfectly, as in it really captures the illusion of being a textile. And these earrings in particular are such a fantastic illusion, that idea of the textile flowing through the ear. It's really, really remarkable. So the next piece to look at this afternoon, actually it shows in even more detail, because we can get up close to your beautiful woven ring, how this chain intersects. Could you tell us a little bit about how you combine gold and silver? Because I think that's quite an interesting idea. How did you come upon that as an approach to use the two metals in your pieces?
Well, with this one, it's quite interesting because it really shows how it's made, because the actual silver aspect of the ring is a coil of wire which creates the ring. And then the gold chain actually is woven through this to actually give structure to the piece. So I quite like the idea that you can really clearly see the making process, but also it gives that patination, which is really nice. And with weaving, it's all about the weft and like how the different threads intersect to get the different patination. And I've actually been developing this to create different patterns within the weave. So yeah, it's the idea of using the gold and the silver I'm really pushing with this collection, because I like the idea of adding in colour and representing how fabrics, it is all about colour and pattern, and trying to really show that within these pieces. And yeah, because that's what I really like about the fabrics, really.
Yes, I guess it carries through that idea that when you have a textile up one way, it can be one colour because of the warps, and turn it over and it's another colour because of the wefts, and it replicates that really well. A really stunning piece. And then these woven hoop earrings, which are all in silver, but again, you've managed to design them in such a way where you create the illusion that they've gone right through the ear. What is your sort of process for designing? Are there particular things that you look to, or is it sort of just musing on the textiles? How do you go about that, Megan?
I'm definitely, I start in my sketchbook trying to get the shapes, but for this it was so difficult trying to work out how to create them, because I was really creating a new process and a new method. So that really influenced the final design. For this one, it's based upon that one structural element, which is the silver on the inside of the hoop, and that gives the shape to the piece. So it kind of, that curving structure really, that influenced the final design. And then, so I find when I'm developing a piece, I'll start in the sketchbook, but it is really the making process that influences the final look. And I'll try it on constantly and see how it feels, and I'll test it out and I'll wear it. And like with this one, I knew it was a good design because you just don't even realize you've got them on. And then someone comments like, "Oh, I like those." And it's just like, yeah, you've got to test them, and a lot of thought's gone behind how they sit and everything like that. And it actually, in this one, it really shows the process where I actually beaded the wires. So each one, they're created on this structure. It's difficult to describe, but it's this structure almost like a loom, and you weave the chains through this, and then you finish it by beading the wire, which is quite a fun process, but that's why you get that lovely detailing on the edge of the piece. So it's definitely how I've made it is got all those design elements that show through the design. Yeah.
Those beaded parts remind me of tassels, because you always have to finish off the end of a textile, don't you? You know, you have the selvage, or you have a tassel, or you finish it somehow. So a similar kind of idea.
Yeah, I kind of developed some other pieces that have the tassel, because I do love the tassel.
Yes, you're wearing your blanket earrings, aren't you,
yeah.
at the moment? Yes, which you can also have a look at on the Shine website. Unfortunately, we can't show you all of the pieces that our makers have made, but yeah, do have a look at the website for more pieces. Thank you so much, Megan. Lovely to see you this afternoon. So now we're going to go up to Scotland to Lyndsay Fairley. Welcome this afternoon, Lyndsay. Lovely to have you here. Could you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the collection that you're presenting in Shine?
Yeah. So this collection that I've brought to Shine is called Namara, which means of the sea in Gaelic. So that really tells about where the collection's inspiration comes from. So it all kind of started with various walks along beaches along the east coast of Scotland. So beaches like Ely and Cramond and North Queensferry. So I was really interested in lots of the kind of messy tactile compositions of seaweed and bits of sort of knotted rope and things that were washed up there. And to really study that further, I made lots of mixed media drawings to play around with the composition and kind of pare back the colour palette a bit as well. And then all my jewellery designs come from the drawings. So they're kind of intended to keep the same sense of spontaneity. So with lots of my jewellery, for instance, the ones which are on the screen at the moment, the pattern on that pair of earrings, it's different for each pair. And even within the pair as well, the two earrings are asymmetrical subtly as well.
I love the way, and if anybody's interested in seeing Lyndsay's sketchbooks, which are absolutely worth a look, do watch her film on the website, because she turns the pages and it's really beguiling. But what I love is how you get that immediacy of those sketches that you've made responding to what you found and you've seen on the beach, but you manage to translate that into the inlays that you put into your pieces. So it continues to have that sort of drawn feel. Could you tell us a little bit about yes, how you translate those drawings into metal, because that's quite, isn't it? It's not an easy thing to achieve, a sort of sense of spontaneity.
Yeah, so I really wanted to keep that kind of sense of spontaneity. So the technique that I developed, it's a kind of wire inlay, so I can combine different metals So this pair of earrings, it's copper wire inlaid into silver. And because when I lay out the pattern, the copper wire is quite fine, so it allows me to be quite expressive with the shapes that I make. And because it's laid out by hand each time and based on the drawings, it allows it to be different, which I think is important as well for where the inspiration comes from. And then once I've done that process, then the sheet is hand formed into tube to create these kind of quite lightweight hollow forms, which still kind of manage to make a statement. So yeah.
Yes, the form of them, the linear form, is very dramatic. We can see it in the photo on the right. I think that in your, sorry, my screen has stopped going on to the next one. Here we go. In your next pair of earrings that we're seeing here, you get even more of a sense of that drawn quality. So it was very interesting hearing you talk about how you draw with the copper wire. Could you tell us a little bit about this? Because the patterning is enamel, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So with these earrings, a slightly different approach. So these have been etched, just kind of a bit more direct, I guess, because it's been photo etched with some of my drawings into the sheet. And then once it's been etched, I sort of hand form it into tube as well before it's enamelled, to create this kind of inky blue-black pattern on there, which kind of reflects the same sort of pattern as seaweed on the sand. And this pair of earrings as well, the findings for these are riveted at the top. I'm actually wearing a pair now, but I really like these earrings because it gives them a lovely swingy motion when you wear them.
Yes, I mean, it's interesting how you manage to get different types of movement or not in your pieces. So the previous earrings were very linear, aren't they, and quite architectural, whereas these sway beautifully. They always remind me every time I see them of Japanese calligraphy. There's something quite Japanese in essence, and that you translate into these earrings too, which are also inlaid, aren't they? Sorry, are also enamelled.
These are also a wire inlay, yeah. So similar technique to with the copper, but this is a different combination. So this is actually gilding metal combined with silver. And part of the process for these earrings is to give the metal a patina. So the gilding metal starts off as quite a kind of subtle bronzy colour. But once it's been given the patina, it turns into this really graphic black pattern, which really stands out.
Thank you so much. And just to say, every single pair of Lyndsay's earrings and other jewellery is unique, and I love that idea that no one else, although the designs derive from the same place, you're never going to see the same pattern again, which is a really beautiful quality. Thank you so much, Lyndsay. Lovely to see you this afternoon. So our next maker is Isla Gilham, and Isla is exhibiting in Goldsmiths Fair for the first time. Welcome this afternoon, Isla. It's really lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm always struck, even in your imagery, you managed to convey this sense of playfulness. It took me a minute when I was preparing this afternoon's presentation to notice the fork diving towards the ring in the shadow. Could you tell us a little bit about your inspirations behind your designs, which are, unique?
So the collection I'm showing at the fair this year is inspired by the tempting and enticing nature of jewellery and gemstones. So one of my main inspirations will always be a tiara my great-grandfather made, and instead of precious stones, he adorned the tiara with jelly tops. So I'm really inspired to create precious pieces with these same delicious twists. So that's where the whole inspiration comes from.
And I mean, it's really striking to see stones cut in such a different way. Could you tell us a bit about the carving process? Is that something that you do yourself?
Yeah, so I hand carve all of the gemstones to look as if they're bitten. And this particular collection that I'm showing with Goldsmiths Fair is inspired by and features stones that remind me of the pieces, the names the pieces are called. So there's cacao, pastel, and belingo, and they're all inspired by the sweets that have these qualities. So smoky quartz is rich and indulgent, and moonstone is soft and opulent like a pastel would look, and lace agate is sugary sweet in its lilac-y tone and has this really unique pattern that the same sweets with the pulled sugar would have.
So we go on to a piece here which doesn't include a stone. Could you tell us a little bit about these earrings and how they are part of that collection?
So these earrings are inspired by a couple of my pieces. So all the bands on the bitten stones are twisted, and I also laser engraved some pearls to look like squished chewing gum. So both of those ideas I combined, and taking the fine jewellery form of a hoop earring. And so they're cast in silver, but before they're cast in silver, I squished each hoop individually. So they're all unique and uniquely squished, and they're meant to look like they've been grabbed in haste.
I love that. I love the use of the word squished. It's not something we hear often in the context of jewellery,
Yeah.
because you tend to be working with things that are a bit harder to squish, or at least while they're not hot anyway. And in your third piece that you're kind of sharing with us this afternoon, we get to see that wonderful moonstone which you've combined with the amethyst. I mean, the colours in these are absolutely enchanting. How do you go about sourcing your stones? So you must be looking for special qualities, given how important they are to the look and feel of your pieces.
Yeah, definitely. So I love to source stones from gem fairs, which obviously isn't possible at the moment, but prior to the pandemic, I would go to gem fairs and have a look around all the stalls and just fill my tray with all the ones that I was most tempted to. So I didn't worry initially about colours or colour schemes or trends or anything. I just picked the stones that I was most drawn to, as you would in a sweet shop. I particularly love carving moonstone because I think it really brings out the glow of the stone, and you can see where the bite is, how it highlights the top of the teeth ridges. So I really love moonstone at the moment.
Yes, it's that the bite is particularly pronounced, isn't it? And the shape of the earring and the pendant. Thank you so much, Isla. Really lovely to see you this afternoon. And we will now move on to Thank you. Our next maker, Francesca Urcouoli. Good afternoon, Francesca. So before we talk about the particular earrings that we have on the screen now from your Shine collection, could you tell us a bit about the inspiration behind the collection as a whole, and the technique that you use, to make your work?
So I think it's best first to introduce the technique, because it's pretty unknown in general. So it's called mokumigane, and in Japanese means literally wood grain, and that's because the final products and the surface usually looks like wood grain. And the way how it works is that you basically start making a stack of metal. So for example, usually I make, for example, silver and palladium, and you will have at least, I would say, 15 layers. So that would be silver, palladium, so repeating them. And it will be like a sandwich that technically speaking, it will be a billet. And at that point, I will have to fuse it either with a kiln or with a torch, so that all the layers basically bond together. And then I'm ready to press it or hammer it, and to make finally the texture, either from a piece of sheet or a piece of wire. And there are different ways to make patterns. You can either carve it with a burr. That's actually my favorite way to do it. Then you can stamp, you can hammer, you can file. Basically any way where you can kind of like go through the surface of the metal, because the point is going through the different layers, so reveal what's under the surface. That's why I kind of also give the title of my body of work, Mapping Mokomegane Under the Surface. And going back to the concept behind it, you can see here some lines and knots. So basically, this body of work tells a bit of me and my story. I travel a lot since I started my jewelry education, and it was always a matter of finding like a new beginning, new possibilities, and different paths every time. So these lines are this, let's say, this journey and the different also detours and chances that I took. And then you can see here the different colors. In this case, I used silver, red brass, and copper. And I also used the patina at the end so that you can really obtain a really nice contrast of colors.
Yes. You get a beautiful sense of this kind of depth to the metal with all these different layers. And obviously when you create it, all those layers, you don't know quite exactly what you're going to find, do you? So there's a exciting part of the process for you as the maker in terms of which way it could go.
Yeah, I'm not let's say a sketch person. I don't really make lots of sketches when I plan my next jewelry piece. I'm more of a dynamic person in terms of that. I always prefer to really like start with practice. So sometimes my next project starts from a previous one, so it will be like a variation of what I did before. And what I really like about Mokomegane is that there's always some kind of unpredictability, because you can't really make okay, you can you know what you're doing, what's going to be like at the end, but there's always some kind of surprise. And because there's never you can never make two pieces to look exactly the same. And because you can hammer with the same force, with the same power, you can carve with the same, again, with the same power. So you're always gonna reveal either less or more layers, and that's gonna give a different patterns. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's why I fell in love with this technique. It's always it gives endless possibilities, basically. And
yes. I'm really struck by the design of the stacking rings that we're looking at the moment, because when you see them from the side like this, and in profile, I guess you might say, they look like the contours of a contoured map. So, I mean, that's speaking to your name for the collection, and how you've enhanced that idea by creating this sort of scallop or undulation around the edge, which really accentuates that idea of those different layers and how they formed. And you've taken that through into your bracelets too. Tell us a bit about that, sort of how you've worked with that undulation to bring out the qualities of the metal.
So yeah, I decided to show for this event these three pieces, so you can see the difference between the earrings. They are more two-dimensional, and the stacking rings and bangles, they're actually more three-dimensional. And that's because this is kind of like a variation of the Mokomegane technique. It's called guribori. That means that you can basically see where I carved, and I don't basically flatten the metal after I make the pattern. So on the earrings, you can see that those are really flat, and I first carve them as well, and then I hammer them flat. in this case, I carved them and I really cleaned all the grooves where I went with the bird. And so you can really see where my hands were. And this kind of like curves and bumps kind of like remind me of a like morphological map. So you can kind of see where the ground has been modified by the water, you know, or the wind. That's why in this case the mapping name. Something that I wanted to say is that you know, for the stacking rings and the bangles, I wanted to use a different material. In this case, as mild steel, and because I really like the combination between the two colors that is very similar to silver and palladium. But in this case, I wanted to kind of like make a collection that was also more reachable for a wider range of budget. So in this case, of course, mild steel is cheaper than palladium. And of course, you have to take more care because if you leave it in the, you know, next to water, it might tend to rust. But for example, I always wear a ring that it's made out of, you can see it here, mild steel and silver. I even take a shower with it or wash my hands. So as long as you wear it, it won't rust. That's what I really like. And the interaction with the body makes it even more wearable.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Fantastic to hear about your technique and your inspirations. Thank you. So now we turn to another shine maker, Daisy Grice, who is coming to us from Birmingham today. So Daisy, you're showing in Shine your Twisted Tales collection. Could you tell us a bit about the inspirations behind that and how you developed the concept for these pieces? We're looking at your sort of your centerpiece of this collection at the moment, aren't we?
Yes. So for this collection, I've always been really inspired by sort of fantasy armour and large sort of haute couture pieces. So in this collection, I wanted to create, well, to show really that I can create sort of one-of-a-kind statement pieces, but then also show really wearable pieces as well. So the hero piece of this collection is what you can see on the screen at the moment. So I do have that in front of me. So this is a large statement collar. I use the material, which is nylon, which is this black material here. And I use this because it's really lightweight. So it was a great opportunity to be able to use this material. It actually comes out white, but then you can dye it any colour. But I obviously love everything black. So yeah, I chose black for this, and it really contrasts beautifully with the highly polished thorns as well. So yeah, this was really the starting point of the collection. So as you'll see on the other ones that we'll show, I took elements of the sweeps of this and then created the other pieces. This also is fitted with a sprung hinge at the back there, so it fits different sizes. But yeah, I wanted to basically make it for kind of like a dark queen. So sort of a maleficent character. So yeah, it was to kind of show that it's like an armour, but it's also, so it's like protecting the wearer, but it's also got the thorns as like a natural defence as well. So my work is a lot of showing contrast between something that many people might find sort of slightly disturbing or quite dark, but I find really beautiful, and I really want to show that through my work.
So let's look at another piece from your collection, because I think that what's really sort of fantastic in the breadth of work that you've developed is that there's a sort of, you can be, you know, that dark queen with the huge piece, but you also have these, you know, beautiful different scales of work, and then the intricacy of the one that we're looking at the moment, the combination pendant, which has this really sparkly line of black diamonds down the middle. But we can see exactly how you've evolved that motif from the larger piece. Could you tell us a bit about the pendant?
Yes, so the pendant was the first piece that then came as more of a wearable piece for the collection. So I do this pendant in a few different finishes and sizes as well. It's always really popular. This one that's on screen at the moment is really quite interesting because it's a combination of, so we've got the black nylon there, we've got the highly polished sterling silver, and then the black diamonds. And nylon and diamonds is quite a strange combination because they're very different in value. and obviously the texture contrast that you have there for sterling silver with the matte black nylon. So the whole piece really is brings together all these combinations of textures, colours, and values, and that for me is what's really exciting about this pendant. And all of my work, it's really important for me that it looks really interesting at every angle. So every piece, even if it's like a small wearable piece, will always be very sculptural. And the double fang pendant, for me, I'm actually wearing one here, but it balances perfectly on the chest. So that's what I wanted to create, because I also really like symmetry within my work. So it's very important that whatever I'm making sits perfectly. And yeah, the double fang just adds as a beautiful centerpiece. Yeah, and I really love the combination of that particular pendant. So.
Yes, I really enjoy as well the way you combine materials. It reminds me of the way you'll get the sort of horns, the antlers of an animal combined with the soft fur. That, you know, those all those in nature where you find those juxtapositions of the hard and the smooth and the soft and all those things, and you marry those together really interestingly. And we can see how you've evolved that idea into your spine ring. I love the name of this one.
Yes.
And you'll see on the website that we've got one size available, but obviously you can make it in different sizes.
Yes. So with the spine ring, if you look at it from the side, you can tell that it's come from the sort of top of the double fang pendant. So all of the collection you can see sort of links in a certain way, but I'm one of those designers, I like to design every piece, so I don't just like to sort of copy elements and scale them or something. I want to sort of evolve the design that's already there. So with this spine ring, it came together because I was looking at vertebrae, so obviously the way that the vertebrae sort of interlinks, I wanted to create a ring that is sort of like an armour for the finger. So I was looking at sort of like the exoskeleton, and so I've got it on here as well. So it does sit quite high on the finger, but I wear mine all the time, and it's got the rounded shank on the inside, so it's really comfortable to wear as well. And for me, that the whole collection, it's inspired by, you know, things like spines and bones, but I never want my work to look literal. So I mean, obviously I know this is a spine, and now that I've shown you the comparison, you can see, but I like my work, but not everyone can see exactly what it is straight away. So and that for me is what's really important about being a designer, is being able to take elements from what you're seeing and being able to manipulate the curves until they're kind of almost unrecognisable, but they still hold the characteristics. And yeah, the collection is showing off that, I feel. So yeah.
I think it absolutely is. Thank you so much, Daisy. Lovely to see you this afternoon. We've got 2 more makers to meet, but I just got a call out. If you would like to put any questions that you have for any of our makers this afternoon, please do add them to the Q&A. I know there's one that came in at the very beginning for Ellis, but all of our other makers will be happy to answer your questions. So yes, do add them to the Q&A function, and we'll look at those at the end. So the next maker I'd like to welcome this afternoon is showing in the fair for the first time, and that's Ella Fearon-Low. Welcome this afternoon, Ella. Lovely to have you here. Hello. Could you tell us, Ella, a bit about the inspiration behind the wonderful collection of brooches and that you're presenting at Goldsmiths Fair this year?
So yeah, you hesitated. It is indeed a collection of brooches.
I did have to think for a second. Is it all brooches? But I think it is.
One set of earrings that can come in all colours. No, I think I have realised this year that I am truly a brooch person. So I actually thought it would be quite interesting to really explore a collection that was just brooches. It won't necessarily always be how I work. I adore earrings and a good necklace too. So this is Aquafolium Sequence, it's called, and it's a linear collection, and that sounds slightly odd, but I didn't develop it in one go. I developed it over time, and each piece almost became a jumping off point for the next piece, if that makes any sense. And I describe myself as a collector of the decorative details of life. So I think all the time since childhood, probably, I have been busy collecting little bits of information from the world around me. You know, it could be from jewellery, but actually it's often from architecture, or from things like sort of quite domestic things like teacups and, you know, things we might find around the home. And so this collection has lots of those influences, ranging from probably sort of postmodern architectural detailing, specifically windows, through to a little bit of deco and quite a lot of sort of Edwardian influences, partly in the design of the jewels and partly in the shapes that I'm using. So yeah, pretty broad cross section.
I love the range of colours that you've worked with in this collection, and also the way you've combined, and we'll see that in the subsequent images, combines oxidized silver bases, but also the sort of high shine gold. So it's a really beautiful range of finishes. But could you tell us a little bit about the materials you combine the metals with? Because you've got lucite, haven't you, which you hand carve, but you've also got gold and you've got vintage pearls.
Yeah, so I really love to mix materials. I think that's something that's actually quite important to me. I love bringing materials together because they look and feel right, not because they're all precious in a sort of innate sense, if you like. So lucite, which is a form of plastic, I actually carve by hand. So I use sort of traditional jewellers' hand tools, files and saws, and sort of polishing wheel to create something very precious from something that is not innately precious. And then that becomes, as you can see, a sort of center point in this work. And what I've really loved in recent times, so this whole collection actually, I use rivets a lot in my work. And actually this whole collection uses gold rivets. So some pieces are 9-carat gold and some pieces are 18-carat. But it's just been wonderful for me to kind of use that because they really pop. They sort of just a little song on their own on the surface of my work. And that's combined with vintage pearls, which now, again, in this collection for the first time, sit on top of the pieces. So it's almost like a little cake, you know, it's like putting those little cherries out. It's slightly practical, but I enjoy it, and I enjoy the process of placing those details and, you know, bringing the piece together.
In the context of this particular one, I love the drilled holes that give that sort of nighttime sensibility. But talking of cake, I'm going to move on to your French fancy, which wouldn't be astray in a French boudoir. I do not think. It's absolutely wonderful. Is this the first time you've worked with this particular colour? Because it's so striking.
So interestingly, I actually worked with this colour right at the beginning of time when I was still in college. Actually, this is the first time I've sort of worked with it in my more sort of, you know, I guess grown-up collections, as it were. And I've really loved revisiting it. I don't think it's going to go away. I love its playfulness. So I think I've always loved a bit of playfulness in my work, and I think this pink just exudes that, really. This piece started with the idea of a little box of chocolates or cakes or something, and I wanted to make slightly smaller pieces than I traditionally make because I do enjoy quite a large brooch. And I think just sort of almost working a little bit more with those details. So again, just the little drilled holes and the sort of different sizes of the pearls and the sheen of the pink. I think, yeah, I really enjoyed this piece. I enjoyed making it, and, you know, I would enjoy wearing it, except unfortunately it's already sold.
That can't be a bad thing. I love the frilly edge, that kind of doiliness of it too. It's interesting looking at all the collections, across all of the collections that we've encountered this afternoon, the synergies that you can start to see. And obviously you and Isla are drawn from, you know, the seductiveness of cakes and how that relates to different materials. And we see a lot to do with sort of the sea and the landscape as well. But you're all making very different and unique work. So I'm going to come to your final piece, Ella, which is a real gem. I know that you, for the fair, you, as you say, you've decided to work with gold a bit more for the first, well, not for the first time, but you just, you know, it was an opportunity to experiment with its use. Could you tell us about this final piece?
Yeah, so I had previously done some commissions with sort of gold vermeil backplates, but actually this was the first piece I made for me, as it were, sort of for a collection like this. And it's also on quite a big scale, so it's actually 11 centimetres across, although it doesn't read as that big when you're wearing it, because obviously it's slightly more refined in its style. And I also used 18-carat gold for all the rivets, so that was the first time using that. And not really sure how that was going to feel, because 9 carat's very springy, so it's very good for for riveting and for bringing materials together. And the 18 carat obviously was softer, but actually it was beautiful to work with, and I will definitely be revisiting that. And I just love the effect of this piece with the black, which was the first time I've used black, and with the gold, and it's a particularly lovely set of vintage pearls and the 18 carat. So yeah, I felt it all came together really well.
It's certainly given me a new complexion seeing you variously across the fair wearing your brooch in the centre, and I think that the designs that you've come up with are really sort of forefront as a piece of jewellery that is, it's right there. It's really exciting. If you're interested to hear more from Ella, there are a couple of things that you can watch on the Goldsmiths Fair website. So as many of you may know, there's a fantastic brooches exhibition, which is an online exhibition which is being curated by the curatorial department at Goldsmiths Hall, and as part of that programme, there's an interview with Ella where she talks about brooches in a bit more depth. And also, Ella, I know I've got Ellis's timing wrong, but I think it's your talk, which is tomorrow, isn't it? Which is on material value. So with two other makers. Do you want to just briefly tell us about that?
Yeah, so myself, Emily Kidson and Jo Pond, we are all known for working in mixed materials. So Emily works with laminate and precious metals and wood, and Jo Pond works a lot with vintage and antique tins into pieces that are also made of precious materials. And so the three of us are talking tomorrow about our relationship to working in mixed materials and about our experience of bringing that work to the fair for the first time.
Fantastic. So yes, there's more if you're interested, and just go to the Goldsmiths Fair events section and you can connect with those things. Thank you, Ella. Lovely to see you this afternoon. So do continue to pop your questions in the Q&A. We'll come to those in a minute. But last but not least, this afternoon, I would like to welcome from Scotland. We have a really good representation from Scotland in our group this afternoon, Caitlin Hegney. And Caitlin, would you like to tell us a bit about the inspirations behind the collection that you're showing in Shine this year?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, absolutely. So the collection that I'm showing with Shine this year is called Ditto, and the reason I've titled it as such is because it's about our relationship in present with our past and our ancestors. So that picks up on my own Scottish heritage, but I'm primarily interested in the rhythmic mark making that has transcended history into the present day. So this collection that I've made really focuses on a variety of different techniques and different materials, exploring the way that markings have transcended the past to the present. So that's really why it's called Ditto. And the reason I think I've been drawn to that, and it's given me such a source of inspiration, is because I'm almost viewing it like a language, really, that communicates between our past and present selves. And I think that there's something really nice and humbling to relate back to, especially in terms of wearing jewellery.
And the particular piece that we're looking at now interests me because you can wear it in two different ways, which is, it's always brilliant to be able to get a piece of jewellery that has two different approaches to wearing it, but also it combines the sort of stud part of the earring combines that sort of hammered mark making, doesn't it? And then you have the wire work in the piece that dangles, and you can see in the image at the top how you can wear the stud on its own. Would you like to tell us a bit about the making of these particular
Yeah, absolutely.
earrings?
So I think as a starting point, that was something really interesting that came out of doing all of this training with the Goldsmiths Centre as part of Shine, was that there was this underlying narrative in my work that I hadn't even really been aware of yet about being that there's always two parts to something in my work, and this piece was actually why I selected to talk about that. So as Charlotte's already said, it's a two-in-one design, which is always a good thing. The top element here is just the round circular studs, which has been a little motif that's followed me through from the start of me creating jewellery and starting my business just under 2 years ago. And these earrings are great for that. So wearing the stud as an earring on its own makes these a really versatile piece, because they I have a pair of these, and I take them everywhere with me because it's great. You can go out during the day and wear the earrings really easily, and then transition to your night statement wear really easily, because the bottom bits just slip onto the bottom part of the earring. And I have to say as well, nowadays, because we're all mask wearing, I can recommend these studs as mask comfortable, because I know I've had to adapt a lot of my jewellery wearing for us now having to fashion new accessories in the form of our masks. Yeah, so I would say that they're really versatile for that. And I also really like this piece because it brings together two of the different techniques that I use to create rhythmic markings and to draw with the metal.
I've not heard of mask suitable jewellery, but I'm sure you are coining a term there, and something which we're all be concerned about. And then we have your statement cadence neck piece here, where you can see how that use of wire and pattern is one form of the link. Could you tell us a bit more about the blue that offsets that beautiful oval of silver?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, the blue has the colour blue has been a reoccurring theme in my work, and it started off as a bit of a fascination really of mine. Again, I think a lot of different projects that I've been working on before had started off with researching something from the past, and really that was what drew me to the colour. I began thinking about how I could introduce a bit of colour into my work, and I fell down a bit of a blue rabbit hole, if you like, and started looking into the history of the colour and what it symbolised, what it means. And there was a particular story that I fell in love with, of course, on being a jeweller, which was about the lapis lazuli stone being the original material that was broke down into pigment to form ultramarine blue paint as we recognise it today, that really vibrant, alluring blue that you kind of just can't really get out your head. So yeah, that was kind of where it all started for me, and I love this idea that the colour blue could carry value into a material that otherwise didn't have any monetary value to it. So the blue elements in this necklace are all made from cuts of reclaimed wood, which I find locally in Scotland, which can be from nature and can also be repurposed from other wooden objects that have had a past life. And the way that I use the colour blue is I create and mix my own pigments based on this bit of lore about the colour, and I apply it almost like a stain to the wood. And on the picture here, and even better on the pictures on the website, you can really see that the way that the stain picks up the rhythmic patterns that are in the grain inherently, and I love that unpredictability about using that material with my pigments, because you never quite know what you're going to get, and I feel like it really makes a nice connection that's almost out with my control as a maker to the rhythmic markings that I'm making in metal that I have much more control over. So that's kind of how the relationship between the two materials came about within my work.
Yes, I mean, you've taught me something new about it this afternoon, looking at it, how those patterns come out, which are a natural version of the types of marks you're interested in. And then we're your final piece, and you have exhibited 3 brooches in the Shine collection. So, and this is one of them. You can obviously see the other 2 on the website, but there's also a short piece as part of the Fair Brooches exhibition about them. Would you like to tell us about this final piece?
Sure, absolutely. So this is maybe one of the techniques that I've not talked about so much already. This piece really this is all the techniques that I use for this is at the core of everything that I've made to date, and it's to do with my process of creating and designing, which goes continually between 2D and 3D as I'm making. So I'm working on paper and I'm figuring out little marks, and as it's happening I'm developing little samples that sometimes become the piece itself. But the markings here are all made out of hand forged tools that I make out of steel, and they're all based on the drawings that I create at various points throughout the design process. So each mark is completely unique, and and it almost acts like a measurement of time. So even then it's like a relationship between the moment that I've made it and now. It's always growing and changing with time. And yeah, so that for me, like, that's really important, that that expression and that identity, if you like, of the mark is mine, because it's a tool that's been made by me that replicates a little moment in time. And yeah, so in any pieces like that I make are always ever so slightly different, because you're making marks and maybe you feel differently that day, so you've never quite got a straight line or a straight marking. And I love that relationship between the then and the now, and that really echoes back nicely into the whole concept behind my work and relating back to our ancestors. And the other thing as well with it, using this sort of technique, is that the pieces that I make often are give this illusion of being quite voluminous and really quite large, but the ear, or in this case this one here, is hollow, so even though it's quite a sizable brooch, it has virtually no weight to it whatsoever for being in silver, because it's not a solid form. But the advantage of that also is that it gives you a little reverse pattern on the back of the brooch, which of course is personal and secretive for the wearer to enjoy when they're taking it on and off as well, which I think is something quite special.
Absolutely. I think the word special is a great way to sum up all of the collections. Our makers have shown us this afternoon such different range of techniques and inspirations and such beautiful forms. So I know we've overrun by a couple of minutes, but I'd love to just take the questions that we've received. Thank you to those of you who are staying with us. So our first question, I think, came in for Ellis, which was a question about how your gems are set. Ellis, would you be happy to respond to that one?
So they're all set through a graining technique, so it's a decorative surface on top, but they're flush set to begin with, and then you put the graining detail on top into the metal. I went for that option because any other form of setting looked a bit too sort of stuck on or contrived. It didn't look as if the diamonds and the metal were kind of fused as one. I did a lot of different experimentation with a few different types of settings, and this seems to be the one which sort of most naturally fits with the aesthetic of the work. So that's why I use it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ellis. Now we have another question. This is to all of you, so if you'd like to answer, I'll take the two quickest. Can I ask how the makers have found selling their work via Goldsmiths Fair online or Shine, as opposed to in the live environment? So maybe we should come to you, Isla, because you are showing at Goldsmiths Fair for the first time. How has it been selling your work through the online environment?
Well, I've never exhibited at Goldsmiths Fair as the physical event anyway, so I can say how it's different to that. But it's quite the same how I sell my work anyway, because I'm based in Somerset in a small village, so I don't meet customers face to face a lot of the time. So I've done a lot of Zoom calls and emails, but I guess it's nice to be able to browse the fair at your own leisure and really think about the pieces that you're going to be inquiring about and buying. So I think that's a nice thing about it.
Certainly, I found myself returning to the website over again.
Yeah.
In a way that physically, you can keep going back, but it's not quite as flexible, is it? I'll come to you on this one as well, Ella, if that's all right, because you exhibited in Shine last year when it was a physical event at the centre, and obviously, in the fair you've transitioned to something online. How have you found that sort of difference between the two different ways of sharing your work?
I think it's utterly bizarre. I really enjoyed Shine last year because I think I really enjoy meeting people. So I love meeting people, putting work in their hands, talking directly. Actually, I have really enjoyed this too. It's just been very different. Sort of standing in your living room, doing social media, putting things out there and waiting for contact to come back. But it has come back. I mean, I think Goldsmiths Fair have done a wonderful job with the website just as you guys have with the videos and things for Shine. I think it makes it so much more accessible and enjoyable, as you say, for people to kind of peruse and get behind the stories and sort of, you know, yeah, find pieces that excite them just as much as if they were at the fair in person.
I think so. I won't speak for the fair, but certainly from a Shine perspective, it has been a big learning curve for us. But we at the centre, in terms of supporting makers, training them to find ways to present their work online. But I think the exciting part is that worldwide audience, but also hopefully all the different new skills, which will be really important, I think, for the future, because I can't imagine that online selling is going to go away, even if we can get out and about a bit more. So thank you for that question. Now we have a question for Caitlin. How did you, this is very specific, how did you link the wood in your necklace? Is wire threaded through the centre, then linked with the jump rings? So that is super specific, Caitlin. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I can answer that one. Yeah, so no, it's little silver links. I'll use my hands, can't help it. Little silver links that are almost like riveted into the side of the wood, if you like, and then they're so each little oval wooden link has two loops at either side of it, and they're silver, and then they're connected through a little silver jump loop. Yeah, so all the if you like, and all the jump loops are soldered, I should say. So I do obviously all of the heat work first with the metal, and then yeah, all those joined elements are then put into the wooden elements last. So that's actually an interesting question. I hadn't really thought of it like that myself. So it's almost like a backwards assemblage. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for that question.
So that's as we're running a little over time, we won't invite any more questions, but other than to share with you, all makers, I don't know if you've seen in the chat, but there's lots of congratulations for all the beautiful work that you have been making. So thank you so much for sharing that with us this afternoon. Just a final reminder of where you can find out more. So I will just quickly share my screen again. So hopefully you are all familiar with these sites, but for Goldsmiths Fair, just goldsmithsfair.co.uk, and I was talking a bit about how you might see some other talks and things. That's just under the What's On section, and you'll also find the brooches exhibition that we mentioned in there. And for information about any of our three makers, Ellis, Ella or Isla, goodness, you've all got names that sort of twist into each other. You will find them on that site. And then for any of you who'd like to take a closer look and watch the films and other fantastic content that's been developed by our Shine makers this year, you just need to go to goldsmiths-shop-talent.org and you will find more. If you just click on Discover the Collections on the homepage, you'll be able to browse through them, or you can click on Meet the Maker to find out more. So it just serves me to say thank you so much to our 8 makers this afternoon for coming online, sharing your work, sharing your inspiration, and sharing your passion for what you do so beautifully. And we will be meeting some more makers on the 5th of October. So that's from 5 till 6 next Monday evening. So we hope to see more of you again then. That will be 8 different makers, another 2 makers who are in the fair for the first time, and 6 of our Shine makers. So yeah, do come along and join us then. Thank you. It's great to have so many of you online this afternoon. Have a great rest of the day. Bye for now.